Good evening and welcome to our business meeting of March 21st, 2024. Please stand. We're being led on the pledge by the Putnam Valley High School stage group. Hey, you know what?
In a minute.
Hi, I'm Jacob Lash, and today I'm representing the Putnam Valley High School stage crew, and I'd like to invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right,
Sound?
there we go.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I slow it down. Sam's speeding it up. Okay, I'd like to open it up for the public to speak on any of the listed agenda items. No? Okay, the treasurer's report is available in the district office for December, in the business office. The next thing on our agenda is the first reading of the Series 5000 policies. The Series 5000 policy updates have been reviewed by the policy committee, as well as the administrators of the various areas that are reviewed. The first reading of the Series 5000 policies does not include the Code of Conduct. This review will be done separately, and there will be a second reading of the policies on April 11th, 2024. The policies are viewable online on the agenda for this meeting, as well as having hard copies in the meeting room. If any member of the public would like to get the link to the policies directly or a hard copy, please contact Maureen Bellino in the district office. Okay?
Just a quick comment. I
Yes.
just want to thank again Helen and Sam for their work on these, reviewing these policies. It's very
Right.
much appreciated.
This was a big one.
So-
It was big.
Yeah.
It took 2 days, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move to the consent agenda.
Resolved to approve the consent agenda, items 2 through 15, is presented to the board at this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments? Mrs. Bellino will summarize them for us.
The consent agenda includes approval of meeting minutes for the last meeting, CSE, CPSE placements, amended 22-23 substitute listing, approval amending additional or unpaid hours for staff members, the 24-25 Board of Education meeting dates, first reading of the Series 5000 policies, approving additional spring coaches for the spring 2024 athletic season, which are volunteer coaches, approval of certain contracts and agreements, including 3 health and welfare contracts with Somers, White Plains, and Katona, a proposal with KG&D for high school track and field project, approving a budget transfer, a donation from the New York State Schools Insurance Reciprocal in the amount of $1,000 for the high school, approving the permanent status of a provisional employee, Regina Denike, after successful completion of an examination in her title, is now considered permanent rather than provisional. Its approval for an overnight trip for the varsity girls basketball team, which already took place. That was the Albany trip. Approval of 23-24 CSE chairpersons and postseason winter stipends for girls basketball and wrestling.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on any of those items? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolutions pass. Reports. Students, how are you doing?
We're doing good, I think. We just have a few things here. So this past Monday was the first day of our CAS, Creativity, Activity, and Service project presentations. I was one of the people who went on Monday, and I think on the 25th will be the next day. Kira's going on that day. We had Seal by Literacy presentations last week. Some of you, I believe, were able to go and attend those. And I'm pretty sure everybody got the seal that went. I'm not 100% sure if I got the seal, but we'll find that out later. Science Research had a very successful meet at WestF last Saturday with many winners. I think some of them off the top of my head are Christina Morganova, Niall Kelly, and I believe Isabella Cui. I believe that they're some of the winners just off the top of my head. The girls' basketball team wrapped up their season on Friday at the state semi-rounds against Notre Dame, and it was a very well-fought game. The spring sports just started, and everybody's getting very excited about that. Tickets for our spring musical Rent, a school edition, go on sale on April 1st, and you can purchase tickets online with the link found on the pvcsd.org website, or they can be purchased by students through Susie Cummings at the high school box office during lunch. And I would just say, as somebody in Rent, just kind of a little plug here, the students and students involved in both crew and the actors themselves are very committed to the show. In fact, right now they're actually having rehearsal literally three doors down. They've been here since 3, and I believe they're going to probably end around 8:30. So we have some very committed students in this show. And this one's for you, Dr. Luff. Senior citizens are invited to a special performance of Rent on Thursday, April 25th at 3:30 p.m. Admission is free and no reservations are needed. There you go.
I appreciate the invite. Thank you, Charlie.
Of course, of course. The National Honor Society is hosting a pajama drive for children in foster care. Boxes can be found in all 3 of the buildings, and we encourage everybody to donate to help children in foster care, and sizes are needed for from infants to 13 years of age. And some exciting news for both of us, as well as Reese, who's not here, and all of the seniors in our school. We have 92 days till graduation, so that's pretty interesting.
Who's counting?
Nobody anymore. And finally, I would just like to plug my little business, Garcia's Goods. This is my baked goods business, if anybody is interested. This is my last business card, which Ms. Parmalee has asked for, so I brought it to this very meeting. Come see me for details if you are interested in some bread or other baked goods of that nature.
I so enjoyed Charles's presentations, both his Seal of Biliteracy presentation and his CAST presentation, both of which he mentioned his business and said, I have cards. And I said, do you have a card? No, I'm down to 1. So I'm like, bring me a card. So he said he would, so I appreciate it. Baked goods, oh my gosh. Anyway, okay. Dr. Luff, did they steal your thunder?
All right, now that I'm pretty sure we violated open meeting laws by hawking student businesses. Yeah, so since the last meeting, our elementary school students participated in their science fair. It's always an exciting event. Students set up their projects lining the auditorium at the elementary school. They had an opportunity to present to members of the Board of Education, administrators, teachers who served as judges. So I was able to go around and visit each of the projects, hear each of the sort of pitches. The students are actually getting really good at this. They'll flag you down and be like, have you ever wondered why? Or they get their little hooks to get you in and to listen to their presentation. It's always amazed to see the work that they can do. And those students that were identified for a variety of reasons will be presenting their projects in the main hallway here at the high school prior to our meeting on April 11th. And then we'll be recognizing both those students as well as the high school mentors who supported them through that process during that same meeting. So anyone interested and out there listening should make sure to come to the April 11th meeting to check out some amazing elementary school science fair projects. Tri-M had their Honor Society inductions. We spoke a little bit about the Seal of Biliteracy presentations. I'm sorry I missed Charlie's. I heard it was okay. No, actually, I heard it was very exceptional. Our middle school had their musical, Anastasia. I was able to go to the dress rehearsal last Wednesday. Without naming names and singling students out, I actually emailed the parent of one of the performers during the show and was like, oh my God, they could sing. It's amazing to see middle school kids as a parent of a 6th grader. Middle school kids are not always the most outgoing, willing to stand up and perform in front of others, and I was amazed by the student performances and the sheer number of students. Right? We essentially run 2 totally separate shows. We cast each position twice, one for the Friday show and one for the Saturday show. So there's a tremendous amount of interest and a tremendous amount of talent amongst our middle school students. Well, on the same lines, many of us were able to go to the dress rehearsal for our elementary school musical, Seussical. There's nothing cuter than kids dressed up as Cat in the Hat rhyming on stage. So that, again, 70 students from our elementary school were involved in this production. So Chrissy Phillips and Maddie Calhoun. Chrissy recognized Maddie as this being her last musical that they'll put on together. So I do want to recognize their efforts and obviously those of the students. And that show goes live for parents on Friday. tomorrow. We spoke a little bit about the CAS presentations. Again, kudos to all of those who participated. Our middle school has a consultant from IB NYP, so the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program has sent a consultant to come visit our middle school. They're there today and tomorrow. I got an opportunity to meet with her this afternoon. She has outstanding feedback from what she had seen visiting classrooms, talking to students, talking to teachers. She's been extremely impressed. She'll be revisiting our building again tomorrow, and all of this is part of the accreditation process, which we will enter into this fall, or next fall. We held the Superintendent's Conference Day. Some of the highlights are an AI, artificial intelligence workshop that received very rave reviews from middle school and high school teachers, a session on teaching E&L learners, and our elementary school was immersed in a variety of instructional programs supporting their ELA initiatives over in that building. I know that Sam had asked a question about Tech Center. Jackie is working on putting together a full presentation, as well as we're going to reach out to the director of the CTE program and invite them to come in and say a few words like we do most springs. But I do want to highlight just the sheer number. 70 students are currently participating in the Tech Center program at BOCES, and culinary and cosmetology are the two highest. We have the most students in those two programs.
If we could hear from students, that'd be bonus.
Jackie, write down students.
If we could hear from students, that would be a bonus.
Yes, of course, and we have a few that I think would come up.
We spoke a little bit about the girls' basketball team. We can argue the unfairness of public high schools competing against private high schools, but you probably don't want me to get started on that conversation right now. It was quite the topic of conversation at the athletic council meeting recently from Section 1 athletics. But our girls' basketball team really battled against a team that essentially recruits basketball players to come play for them. We were down big, battled back, down big again. All of a sudden, there's 4 minutes left in the game, and it's a 3-point game. You're like, oh my God, they're going to pull this off. So unfortunately, in the end, we weren't able to, but I'm very proud of them and their efforts and their willingness to continue to fight and battle back in what, in many ways, was sort of an unfair matchup. So kudos to them. They've had a tremendous run with sectional titles and state tournament appearances, and we couldn't be more proud of them. We held after-school professional development meetings this week. We're issuing a new response for proposal for transportation contracts. So if anybody out there knows anybody who owns a bus school transportation business, send them our way. Athletic council meeting I spoke a little bit about. And we just came from our second budget Q&A session upstairs in the high school library. We had one in the middle school yesterday, and many more coming. So anyone interested in the school budget, has any questions, topics, or just wants to hear Jill and I ramble on, we invite you on to join us at any of the upcoming budget Q&A sessions. Upcoming events, we have the second half of our high school CAS portfolio presentations coming up on the 25th. The 26th is the Middle School National Junior Honor Society induction, 7 p.m. at the middle school. And
The invitation I got today said 6.
6. Is that what I said?
I thought you said 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dan, rewind that and see what I said. Okay. National Junior Honor Society ceremony, 6 p.m. on the 26th. And our next budget, or actually our PETA budget Q&A session is scheduled for the 27th at 6:30 p.m. As we already heard from Charlie, TheaterWorks performance of Rent scheduled to begin Friday, April 26th. Tickets go on sale on April 1st. And I'd like to wish everyone a very nice spring recess. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to start our presentation tonight with the budget presentation. I know that Dr. Luft and Mrs. Figuerella are anxiously awaiting to share their budget with us again.
Where's the presentation?
6 p.m., that's it, 6 p.m. Okay.
It's very discombobulated. All right, good evening, everyone. So this evening will be our second run-through of our budget presentation. It'll be a slightly abridged version of the first one, mostly because people get tired of hearing Jill and I talk about the same things over and over again. So as always, this budget is built on the foundation of what we believe in Putnam Valley, and that's all centered on our core values: community, opportunity, resiliency, empowerment. Those are our core values, and they're supported by empathetic, courageous, joyful, and reflective learners. So in everything we do, we like to base ourselves or ground ourselves in what those core values are here in Putnam Valley. While we're very proud of our current leaders across our buildings, we understand that this budget is really about cultivating the leaders of tomorrow, and those are the students we serve each and every day, always keeping the students first and foremost as we make decisions. Just a quick recap of our current enrollment. We currently have, or are estimating to have, 1,481 students next school year. So at our elementary school, we're looking at 525 students. That's a decrease in 52 students. The primary reason for that decrease is we have a very large class moving from 4th into 5th grade, 130 plus students. And we currently have a very small incoming kindergarten class. We're estimating about 80 students. So just the difference between those two classes accounts for that delta between those two numbers. Our middle school will be welcoming that large class coming into 5th grade, but also moving a larger class onto the high school. So we anticipate our middle school with 3 additional students. Oh, I should emphasize for the elementary school, we do have 1 additional staff position. So that staff positions, we have a fairly large 3rd grade class right now. It was a priority of the board to lower class sizes wherever possible. So the decision was made to maintain 6 sections of 4th grade, which would, in fact, lower the current 3rd grade class sizes as they move forward. So that's an additional teaching position, which will be utilized to reduce class sizes in the elementary school. Middle school, as I mentioned before, expecting 3 additional students. Staff numbers remain the same, although we do have 6 sections coming into the current 5th grade. And at the high school, 15 additional students. As always, we welcome upwards of 13 students from the Garrison School District that'll be joining us. Garrison paying their tuition, so those students can attend Putnam Valley. And that reflects part of that change. For our administrative offices, we continue to have 21.25 staff members. 25 is not a part of a person, but part of a week. But there's no additional staffing at the district office level. And transportation, while we've seen some growth over the current year, we don't anticipate any changes for next year, and there's an asterisk there. As we had mentioned on several occasions, the district is being pushed to issue a new RFP for transportation services. Depending upon what those numbers are for hiring through a contractor, it's possible that it could be cost effective for the district to invest in its own drivers. So while we don't have money necessarily budgeted for new drivers, if it's deemed efficient and cost effective, the district could move money earmarked for the contractor and use some of those monies to hire our own drivers. So while we hope it's 0, which means we got a very fair response for our proposal, and our bus contractor is going to come in and provide a service at a good rate. If that ends up not being the case, the district has the flexibility to continue to invest in our own transportation department. As always, the budget is grounded in 3 main categories: our academics, which include our programs, instilling the core values in our students, professional development, everything that goes into our instructional program. The second being staffing and other contractual expenses. Obviously, the number of staff we have, our contractual obligations, and all that goes into supporting those staff members, and transportation and facilities we've spoken about. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jill, who deserves the credit for all of this work. Thank you, Jill.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, Okay, so we're going to go forth and talk about some of the numbers in the budget. So as always, our budget is student-focused, hopefully fiscally responsible. We remain under the tax cap once again. Throughout the entire history of the tax cap, we have done so. And we have a balanced budget, so that's always a good thing. This year, of course, living within a 2% tax cap, but we have a much higher percent increase in our CPI, which is, we know, close to 5%, in some cases more, depending on the type of expense. So these are some of the challenges that we're facing with this year's budget. And they would include health insurance premiums going up 5%. As you all know, we're involved in the Health Consortium, which is part of the Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES districts. There are 14 of us who participate in that, 14 districts. And just as a side note here, I thought it was important to mention, I've mentioned it before, post-employment benefits, that's benefits for retiree health costs, they make up about 33% of our total health premiums. So some work has been done to try and help mitigate that within the bargaining unit contracts. There's been contributions asked for retirees to come from retirees going forward, not obviously retroactive to retirees who've already passed, but just for the new contracts. So I thought that that was important to mention, that we're working towards mitigating that expense as much as possible. So we're going to see some, obviously, bargaining unit contract increases. They were just successfully negotiated last year for the civil service employees and for the teachers union. We'll see vendor contracts as well as the cost of those things in any of their contracts, whether it's their materials and supplies or their insurances or just the cost of doing labor, shipping, and whatnot, that will cause increases throughout the budget. Property insurance premiums were increasing. Again, we're seeing 16% this year. There was about 20% increase, so 36 over the last 2 years. And there's a number of factors involved in the reason that's happening. One of them is the cases that children are allowed to sue school districts up until the age of 55 now, if there's any sort of accusation for child abuse. There's also a lot higher premiums because of construction, reconstruction, extreme weather conditions. So we're experiencing a lot of those increases due to for those reasons. Our special education students aging out at 22, and I know I don't know if there's a new law in effect or there's something coming into effect where that might not be the case anymore, but as of right now, what I know is that we are obligated to educate any students until they're 22 now instead of 21. Transportation home to school, Dr. Luff just talked about the routing, the conditions we have, situation with contractor having to go out for a new bid, and possibly looking at a 40% increase, whether it's district driven or contractor driven. So that's more to be seen on that. In fact, the contract last time we spoke at the last budget meeting, we said the RFP was going to be coming back after the budget was adopted, but we were able to move that date to before the budget is adopted, so we will have more exact information on that. So we'll be able to share more figures. If we have to amend the budget before we adopt it, we can do that. Then we've had some revenues increasing that are going to help us out with all of those increases. Obviously, not enough to make up the entire difference from budget to budget, but enough to help us along. We are seeing increased interest earnings. We're going to about $500,000 next year. We're going to have some tuitioning in students from the Garrison School District coming to our high school. That'll bring us about $150,000. We are seeing an increase in foundation aid, unlike many of the other districts. And again, our state aid figures are not going to be final until April 1st. So as of right now, we're looking at about $120,000 extra in foundation aid over last year. Again, transportation aid, the only reason I'm mentioning this is because you're going to see our transportation aid estimates are higher, but that's because we know that our costs are going to be higher. So transportation aid is one of those aids that's expense-driven, which means we only get aid based on what we spend. So if the cost goes up, so does the aid. It doesn't really mean that we're gaining that much more just because the aid is going up. We are going to be using, as of right now, about $400,000 in reserves to make up the difference in the gap between what we're able to raise in taxes, what we're getting in aid, and what we get from local revenues. Most of that is, I'm going to say, attributed to the fact that our transportation contract is going to have to increase, and not to build it all into the budget line for transportation because we're really not sure until we know what that RFP comes back at. So we pushed in about $400,000 from reserves to try and help us out with that. So now we'll talk about the revenues overall. So we're looking at our state aid at $16.5 million. That's a 5.7% change. Our other local revenues, which include that interest revenue that I mentioned, that's in that figure, $970,405. Our transfer in from debt service fund, we're transferring in $1.3 million from our debt service fund. That will help pay off our debt while we release some of that money to help pay for the track field and fencing that we talked about earlier. We're bringing that money in from money that we already have. It's not new dollars coming from taxpayers. And then our school taxes, the tax cap is at 2.59%, but we're going to put a figure of 2.56% increase in the budget. That should cover what we need between the state aid, the other revenues, and the reserves that we're using. Again, we're using about $400,000 worth of reserves. Our budget to budget is 4.15%. And I think worthy enough to mention, bless you, is the fact that we are bringing in the 1.3 million, so that's part of that 4%. And we also are budgeting about $1 million between the reserves and the transportation increase of another $1 million. So removing both of those, we would be seeing a budget to budget of about 1% if we didn't have those two items. Now we do have them, so the budget to budget is 4.15, but again, 2.56% for the tax levy change. So we're going to go through the cap again, understanding the tax cap as many times as I say it. You know, I'm sure each time I say it, I hope every time I say it, someone gets another piece of it and understands it a little better. So for us, it's about 8 different steps. We start with the prior year's tax levy. We have an allowable growth factor in our district of 1.0052, which that is a measure, it measures the quantity change in the amount of the locally assessed taxable real property on our assessment roll. So any of the assessed values on our assessment roll, if we increase them by 1.0052, we get 209,560 to add to the levy. And then we remove what we consider our capital debt expenses for the prior year, which is $1,163,000, and that is the capital expenses less the aid that we get on them. Then we're allowed to add the CPI. The CPI can only be up to 2% no matter how much it is. So it's capped at 2%, and that for us is $786,000. So leaving us a net number there, and then we get to exclude our current year's capital expenses versus our building aid, which is $1.2 million. And then this year, because one of our pension plans, the local retirement system, not the teacher's retirement system, went up over 2%. It was 2.1%, so we get to add a 0.1%, which is $5,552. And then our allowable tax cap is at 2.59%. The value there, $41,343,912. We're using 2.56, which is just slightly lower, about $13,000. And that's how we calculate the cap. So where does all this money go? It goes to salaries, benefits, out-of-district tuitions, professional services, utilities, repairs and maintenance, transportation and equipment, and all the other supplies that we use during the year in the school district. So here's our expenditures from top to bottom. We have our instruction and student services. That's the largest portion of our budget, and it's at $18.2 million. We're seeing a slight increase there, 2.37%. Our special education expenses, $7.9 million. Our instructional media, library, and automated services, you're seeing an increase there of about 12.8%. It's mostly due, we had a couple of things in the COVID funds that we were spending from COVID monies, and now we will be, there was a position, in a library position specifically, and of course the increase in cost for technology is in that line as well. So that's where you're seeing the increase there. Then we are seeing $4.3 million for pupil services and athletics, transportation, $4.1 million, which has our increase for the new contract in it. The general support, district administration, legal and insurance costs, $3 million, approximately. Again, that has a large increase for the property and casualty insurance we talked about a little earlier, 16% in there. Employee benefits, those are also up. Again, health premiums are up, so $13.8 million this year. Our debt service expenses, that's the expense for our principal and interest that we pay on our capital projects, and that is $3.2 million. Again, the interfund transfer coming in for the purposes of funding the field, fencing, and track, which won't happen until the summer of 2025. And that's the $1.3 million, the overall budget increase of 4.15%. So our three-part budget allocation of all of our resources would be 75% for program, 14% for capital expenses, and almost 11% for administrative costs. Does anybody want to ask any questions up to this point about the budget or go over anything? Because there's going to be we're going to do a little bit more on capital and transportation.
Could you explain, the 4% budget to budget, that it
Right,
really isn't that?
Right, so I'll go over that again. So here, seeing the 4.15%, right? So part of that is the $1.4 million that we have coming in for the track and field and another interfund transfer from our special aid account for something for our summer programs. But a big part of that is this. And then also the transportation expenses, you're seeing $500,000 added in here, and I'm sorry, over $1 million actually in both categories. And you would be looking at a 1% budget to budget increase if we, didn't have the unfortunate circumstance of the transportation contract, and then this artificially kind of inflating the budget, the $1.3 million, because we have that coming in as revenue as well from our own resource.
That's an important point that
Right.
people really need to understand.
Right.
That it's a lot of that is coming from money we already have in district.
Right.
Just moving it over.
And actually, this next slide kind of, it did explain that in different terms. So we have our capital expenditure incorporating the track and field for the $1.3 million, and the transportation contract for the additional cost that we feel it's going to be, totaling a $1.84 million increase in the budget to budget. And again, if we didn't have that, would be like a 1% increase from budget to budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so of course, we continue to try to maintain our facilities, our infrastructure, and property values, right? So we always continue to evaluate our facilities needs. We update our 5-year plan. And in doing so, that's how we discover, what capital needs we're going to have and how we plan for them. And when we look at our our debt service and what it is now, our debt expenses, what we're paying for principal and interest, when are they going to start to retire off of our budget? So when is it going to be an ideal time for us to plan the next capital project in order to keep up our facilities, in order to keep our tax cap at an even level, in order to keep our homes and community experiencing and having the same home values that they've had all along and not diminishing that for them. So we're protecting our assets is what we're doing. So how do we sustain that? We sustain that by having a predictable tax levy and tax rate. So in order to do that, we have to plan ahead, and that's some of what I just said. I'm not going to read through this entire thing. I like to have these more wordy, I would say, type of slides, especially for those people who are not here, who are not listening, and who are looking this up on the website and saying, what are they talking about? I need a better explanation. Hopefully some of this will feed into that, and it will help explain it. And of course, we're always there for questions if this doesn't do the job. So if there are fluctuations in our debt level or in the cost within our budget for, say, the purchase of a bus or for the cost of repairing the field, that's going to cause the budget to go up and down in ways that are not sustainable. So in order to sustain that and keep our levels of expenditures flat, we have to be thoughtful about how we do that. So in order to afford a capital project, we have to try to reserve as much as we can and keep that money safe so that when we do have to do improvements or changes to our facilities, we can mitigate some of those expenses. We do that with a capital reserve account. More specifically. So a capital, on the budget this year, on the ballot this year, we're going to have 3 propositions. We're going to have the actual budget itself, we're going to have a proposition for a capital reserve 2, and also another one for a bus proposition. I'm going to review the capital reserve 2. So the reason we have to call it 2 is because we established a capital reserve about 10 years ago in 2015, December of 2015. That only lasts 10 years. It's a state law. You can only have it in active for 10 years, and you set an amount of money that you can accumulate up to. So we set one at $10 million over 10 years. We have not accumulated the $10 million, but we have reached the 10 years. So therefore, if we want to continue to do that and we want to continue to save towards future capital projects, in an economically, safe way, we have to establish a second reserve. We can keep the money that's in the first reserve in there until we're ready to use it, which will be, we're looking at 27, 28 for some of our debt falling off of our schedule for payments that we're making currently. So that would be the ideal time for us to have a capital project. In order to continue saving for those types of expenditures, we would have to establish a second capital reserve. I'm asking through proposition for the community to approve that we are able to we're not putting any money into this account. All we're doing is asking for permission to replace the reserve so that if we should have any remaining funds at the end of the year, which we normally would if we have a good budget, and we have fiscally responsible spending during the year, anything unexpended could be added into that capital reserve. If we don't establish the reserve, we can't use it. So that's the first one. How do we do it? So there has to be voter-approved proposition, which I just explained, for specific purpose or multiple purposes. So we can name as many things or as few things as we want, as long as we don't go outside of that scope. The money cannot be added to the reserve without board approval, and money cannot be removed from the reserve without voter approval. So the money cannot be added to the reserve without board approval. That means at the end of each school year going forward, if there are remaining funds in the budget after we close the books, I have to come to the board, Jeremy has to, the superintendent has to come to the board and ask for permission to put money into that reserve. So the board makes that decision, is that where we want to put our unexpended funds? And then voters have to approve to have it removed. So if we do a capital project, we prepare a capital project and we say we're going to use part of that money towards it so that we don't have to finance it, the voters have to approve that. So no money's added to the reserve unless there are remaining funds at the end of the school year, after the books are closed, which I just explained. And there is a maximum amount of time that we can have that, I'm sorry, there is a maximum amount of time, I want to see how that's worded. Maximum amount of, and time frame established at the. Time and amount. Time and amount, right. So I guess that's what I was trying to say there, not so well. So up to 10 years for $10 million. Okay. The second proposition is our bus proposition. So in order to have a placeholder, in order to be able to finance any type of bus purchases or vehicle purchases, we don't want to have to take that money directly from our budget. We want to have a bus replacement plan laid out so that we know if we need to buy vehicles, if we need to take routes from our contractor because we feel we have drivers to fill those positions and it's saving us money. If we have to replace any of the current vehicles that we already own. This will help mitigate the expense of that because when we use the bus proposition to finance new vehicles, we get to pay them off over a longer period of time. It keeps that line in the budget flat. And so this just creates a place and gives us flexibility to purchase vehicles when we need them. And of course, we don't know how the RFP is going to go, so we're not sure whether we're going to have need to use this money or not. Again, there's no money put into this account. It's simply there for the purposes of giving us permission to finance the purchase of vehicles if we need to.
Jill, I think it's important to stress that both of these propositions, and you said it, but just to stress it some more, do not add extra monies to the budget. They're neutral. And there are state laws that we have to follow.
Correct.
To create that capital fund, basically a savings account, the state requires us every 10 years to recreate the thing. And no money's coming from the taxpayers to do that. The same with the bus proposition. We need that proposition there to give us permission, if we ever need buses, to expend money on the buses.
Right. There's no new money coming in for it.
Exactly.
It's only unexpended funds that are from the budget as far as the capital reserve goes.
And again, in order for us to create the capital project savings account and the bus plan, basically, this is New York State law. We need the okay of the taxpayers. That's why these are important.
That's correct. Yep. Okay. So just to summarize, the 24-25 school budget vote, there'll be the budget proposition. Currently, the number is $60,557,653. That can change depending on the outcome of the RFP for transportation or the state aid. So that's, tune in next time. And I'm thinking, when is our next meeting? April 11th. So we'll know by then, as far as the state aid goes, hopefully, we'll know then. And we won't know about the bus proposition until the following meeting. So we have the 11th and the 16th, we have one right after, because we have the BOCES budget, annual vote that night. Okay, and then there's the proposition to establish a second capital reserve and the proposition to allow the financing of the district buses. And of course, we have two board trustee positions on the ballot as well. And does anybody have any questions?
When do we approve the budget?
We were originally hoping to do it the 11th of
That's
April,
what I was
but I
thinking,
want
but
to hold off
okay.
until April 16th if we can. If we know the results of the RFP, we're going to do it that night. Hopefully, we'll be able to pull it off by then. So,
Okay,
yeah.
because that's what I was thinking, I had the 11th in my head.
Yeah, I think it's
So-
mandated to be by April 25th or 26th.
Okay.
So we definitely have to do it by that night, but I would want to try to get it done sooner so we can get our newsletter done and
I was
all
gonna
of
say,
the other.
How will that impact the newsletter? Just
It will. I mean, it's just going to give us less days to prepare. I mean, it's a matter of changing numbers at the last minute. Hopefully, we'll have everything else put in place before that. So, yeah.
A question for you. Thank you, first of
Yep,
all.
you're welcome.
You mentioned obtaining the money from the reserves for the increase in the bus transportation. But if your projected number, if they go over your projected number, would you take additional funds from the reserves to compensate for that?
So, and that's kind of like what we put some money in the transportation line itself already to cover what we were hoping was going to be the total. If we should need some of the reserves that we planned, the 399, we'll use some of that towards it. And yes, we would have to go deeper into the reserves if it came in at a much higher number. And I don't know if we would need to cut something to do that, but talk about that when the time comes.
Right, let's hope it's underneath it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I attended by Zoom the Money Talks series on understanding state aid, which was a good refresher. I mean, every time I hear it, I learn something else about understanding state aid. But there were good points and good advice. I will tell you that as I listen, I'm so proud of all the things they said. You should check with your business official to see if they do. I know you do. You know, check with your superintendent to see if they do. We do. So, like, it's like, yes, yes, yes. So, I know that both you and Dr. Luft walk a fine line between taxpayers and our students and staff, our educational program, to try to balance it so that it's fair to both. I appreciate all the work that you do in that regard, and more so the sort of sense of trust, because as I listen to the news and what's happening in other districts, your advice, like these numbers are like crazy big to, you know, I mean, it's like, it's hard to wrap your head around it. And there's so many laws and layers and rules. I, as a board member, really rely on your advice and your efforts to ensure that Putnam Valley schools continue to grow, that our students are well educated, that our taxpayers are taken into account and respected, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of that.
Thank you. It's a big responsibility, and I don't take it lightly, so thank you.
Along with those lines, something I've been thinking about, Jill, is when you put together these budgets, you're not just looking at this year. You're looking at 10 years down the road and 10 years past when you're doing it. So, and that's what's gotten us into this sound financial
Right, it needs to be in
foundation,
multiple
so-
years, always, and I think that's really good advice for anybody going forward as well, so.
Yep, so you've done a great job on that, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we just need to also review what we talked about last board meeting. The fact that last year our budget passed by 54%.
Right, so I think Dr. Luft is going to talk a little bit
Okay.
about voters.
Excellent.
I wanted to get through this portion of it first.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Oh, we didn't talk about contingent.
Yes.
Okay, so quickly, again, and not that this is really a quick topic, it shouldn't be a quick topic, really. It's pretty simple, though. It's simple to say, but it's not simple to resolve the problem. What we have is, you know, always the possibility that a budget could fail. And, you know, we haven't had an experience with that, thank goodness, and I haven't anyway. And if the budget does fail, there is an opportunity for the board to re-present it at the same level, at the same amount, or make changes and then present it again. But the part that's not easy to overcome is if the budget were to fail a second time. A budget failed means that for our district, over $1 million has to be cut, almost $1.1 million. Obviously, cuts like that would impact many different things, not just one particular thing, not just sports, not just what people might think are the first things on the chopping block. I mean, it's going to affect teachers and programs and athletics and professional development. So you're talking about your entire program for your district. So this is not just something that happens one year either. So if it were to happen and we had to do something like that, it compounds from year to year. So being that the tax levy cap is calculated using the tax levy, if I have to cut the tax levy back to what it was last year, it means I'm cutting $1 million out of the new budget, and then the following year, that compounds, and you're starting with a tax levy that's $1 million less than you would have from the year before, so now you're $2 million behind. So now, not only do you have to keep those things cut that you may want to change what you're cutting and add and subtract, but now you're up to $2 million in cuts. And it keeps compounding year after year after year when something like that devastating can happen. What we should be learning from this is that we don't have enough voter participation, and Dr. Luft is going to talk more about that, but this is the ramifications of a failed budget, and I think it's important to discuss this in more detail since we seem to have such a lower voter turnout.
And in addition, we're required to talk about.
I am required to talk about contingency if people don't understand it. There are other factors involved in the contingency as well, but just getting past that first one, I think, is where, the other things just pale in comparison to what we have to meet compared to that. So,
Thank you.
Hello again. So, as a former Putnam Valley student and the current superintendent of Putnam Valley Schools, I couldn't be more proud of what we have to offer the students of Putnam Valley. We're extremely privileged to have rigorous instructional programs facilitated by fantastic staff and building leaders, district leaders, our extracurricular activities, everything we have to offer the students of Putnam Valley. I could not be more proud of the job we do. But as someone who's also been around Putnam Valley for many years, I also recognize, for whatever reason, despite all of our successes and all there is to be proud of, our budget passing percentage remains on a razor's edge. So last school year, 54.4% of ballots cast were in favor of passing the budget, which means just under 46% of ballots cast were opposed to the budget passing. As this slide shows, that's significantly below schools in the state, schools in the region, as well as schools downstate. So I want to talk a little bit about what leads into that 54%. First, I want to thank those individuals who come out and vote that are aged 55 and older, because ages 55 and older represent more than 50% of all votes cast on our school budget. So by virtue of our budget successfully passing, tells us that many of those individuals in those age groups, 55 to 74, represents 42% of all ballots cast. Ages 75 and above represents 14%. That those individuals are really responsible for the fact that our overall budget passes. 37% of registered voters, 37% of ballots cast were cast by those aged 30 to 54. So that age group would traditionally be parents of school-age students. And individuals aged 18 to 29 represent 6% of our vote. I think what is maybe most concerning for me is we look at our parents. So if we just focus on parents who cast a vote, only 25% of our parents came out and voted for our school budget, which means 75% of parents of school-age children did not come out and cast a vote on something that is so important to our community, to the home values of community members, and to the experience our students have here in Putnam Valley. Without naming any names, if anyone's watched the news or gone to the newspaper, we see the ramifications of a defeated budget and the significant adverse effects they can have on school districts and what that means following a defeated budget. And as Sam had touched on before, a defeated budget for us would result in $1 million of cuts for next year. The following year, we would start $2 million in the hole. The year beyond that, we'd be $4 million. And that will just continue to compound forever into the future. And those type of cuts have drastic impacts on our students. When we look at registered voters, this might sound odd, but we actually have significantly more voters come out and cast votes than some of our neighboring districts, which is a little scary. Looking at the data, we had 3 more voters than the Yorktown School District did. And Yorktown is significantly larger than ours. And we had 200 more voters than the Lakeland School District that had maybe 4 times our size, the Lakeland School District. The difference is both of their budgets passed with nearly 80% approval compared to 20% no votes. But in total, 18.9% of our voters come out and cast a vote for the school budget election, which means 81% do not. And when we look at registered voters for parents, 30% of our parents that are registered voters come out and vote. They represent 25% of all votes cast, but 70% of parents do not come out and vote for something, again, that is so significant to our students. Our promise is always to provide accurate and timely information to the community. We hold our budget Q&A sessions. We do this presentation over and over again. We're willing to speak with anyone at any time who has any questions. Our goal is always to have an empowered community. How you vote is how you vote, but I want you to have accurate information before you show up to make that decision. We have our no vote number block stays very, very static. But what we've seen over recent years is the number of individuals coming out and voting yes has actually steadily declined. I don't believe there's less yes votes out in the community. I just believe less people are getting out to vote. And I think that's what these slides are intended to show us. We encourage anyone who has any questions to reach out to Jill or myself. Anybody who hears anybody else or sees anything on social media, don't hesitate to reach out. All we can do is provide you with the correct information to allow you to make an educated decision when it comes time to vote. And that's ultimately what our goal is. If those numbers were flip-flopped and 80% of our community were to come out and tell us that our budget is too much, then that would be a really telling thing. For 18% of our community to come out and vote and a budget to be defeated and how drastically that would impact our schools would be a travesty to our community, as well as the 80% of the individuals who did not vote. Because it would impact not just our instructional program, but our home values and everything else. So as we had mentioned, we have a couple more of these budget Q&A sessions coming up. If anybody has any questions or is just interested to hear more, we encourage you to come out. Our next one is scheduled on the PTA meeting on 3/27 at 6:30 p.m.
What does that say?
Just some quick reminders. The budget vote is scheduled for May 21st. Our polling is open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. I know it's one of the longest windows around in terms of when our polls open and close. We want to make the polls accessible to all individuals, those working in the city, those working overnights, those, no matter what your circumstance is, we want to make sure you have an opportunity to come out and cast a vote. Absentee ballots are going to be available. They're not yet available, but Maureen Bellino would be the contact person. We believe, April 22nd?
You're not allowed to mail down the application until April 22nd.
So as we approach April 22nd, the district will be making a concerted effort to publicize that option to all community members. But at this point, it is not allowed. Obviously, we don't have all this information yet. We would need to have all of the budgetary information with our adopted budget, as well as any individuals running for the Board of Education. We would need to know all of that information before we can start sending out absentee ballots. But that will be an option. I did want to highlight a couple of the things that Jill had mentioned before. The two propositions, my fear is this, when individuals are standing looking at their ballot, they'll see Proposition 1, capital reserve $10 million. And they're going to go, oh my God, $10 million, right? What the proposition is permission to put up to $10 million into a savings account. With that permission comes $0 expended. The next one is the bus proposition. The bus proposition is really about providing the district flexibility. If it becomes cost effective for us to hire our own drivers, those drivers need buses. So we need permission to borrow money to buy buses. By granting the district permission, you're expending $0 at that time. You're just granting permission for the district to borrow money if it becomes cost effective to do so. So I just want to keep highlighting for anyone, both propositions have a net budget impact of $0. Both propositions are really just providing the district permission to, one, save money, to ultimately save taxpayers money in the long run, right? The more money we can save towards a capital project, the less money we have to borrow. The less money we borrow, the less we pay in interest. And the second one is to provide flexibility for transportation. If it's cheaper for us to hire our own drivers and buy our own buses, we need to have permission to do so. Without that permission, taxpayers could be spending more money by being forced to pay a contractor price regardless of what it is once we have no flexibility. So both propositions are about permission, not necessarily about dollars. So I don't want people to be scared by seeing dollars in the descriptions because it's really about permission, not money. Any other questions?
One thing, not really a question, a comment. You know, as we know, the town budget does not get voted on, the county budget does not get voted on, the state budget does not get voted on by community members, but the school budget does. And I'm curious if that's part of the issue, is some people may not realize that they vote for the school budget, that that's an option, so.
Yeah, as the person responsible for the school, that's a little disconcerting. Right,
And they all get paid for being on their boards, and we don't.
Right.
So.
You can be mad at the state or the county or the town, but the only way you can let people know that you're mad is by voting no on the school. So yeah, I mean, obviously I have very strong feelings as to how this process should work across the state as long as you remain below the tax levy. But I don't have that much power to make those decisions. So we'll play by the rules of the game as they are laid out in front of us. And as we had mentioned before, it's always our goal to both recognize the needs of our instructional program as well as the needs of our community, and to come up with a fiscally responsible budget that honors everyone's needs. And as we say time and time again, the strength of the school district is directly related to the value of your home. So they actually serve each other.
And the value of the education that we're providing our students, obviously.
That's
so.
right.
Very true.
I just want to continue to point out that the number 25% of our parent population voted for the budget last year, voted for or against, doesn't matter, but people need to come out and vote. It is a problem that our parent population is not coming out to vote, and I don't think that it is a willful problem. I believe in my heart that people think because Putnam Valley is so great and because our schools are so wonderful and there's so many awesome opportunities for our kids, that it's just automatically going to pass. Like the thought might be, who would fail Putnam Valley's budget vote? Like who would do that? And I think that we need to start considering what the implications of not voting could be, because we were 5% away from having to cut a tremendous amount of money away from our students, away from our children, the sports programs, the extracurricular activities, the shows, the plays, all of the implications that could happen, and not to mention the implications of the future years of continued cuts that we would see if the budget were to fail. And part of that problem is not just how people are voting, part of the problem is who is voting and who is not voting. So my message to the community, because this is going to be the thing that I talk about from now until that vote is over, is to please, if you are a parent in this district, please come and have your say, whether it be for or against the budget, have your say, but don't waste your vote. Come out, have your children come with you, show them the amazing process that we have in this country to be able to have the right to vote. And please give us your opportunity to speak about what we're doing in the school district. If you're against it, as Dr. Luff said, we have to look into that. But if you're for it, wonderful. We just need you to bring your voice. Please bring your voice and bring your friends and bring your family. You know, I'm going to try to launch some kind of campaign, each one reach one. If you come to vote, bring somebody in your car to vote as well. Go and pick somebody up that might not be able to get there. And again, the absentee ballot vote is going to be a huge game changer this year. There are no more limitations. If you need that absentee ballot vote because you cannot, come the day of, even though the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., please reach out to Maureen so that you can get the information to be able to still have your voice spoken up in the district. Thank you.
And I would definitely echo what you're saying, but I also think it's, definitely parents, but also the entire community. This is their school, this is their district.
Absolutely.
The entire community needs to be informed.
Absolutely.
And come out and vote.
Yeah, I think my concern is that there's a lower number of parents voting than there are of non-parents. We are the ones that have kids in the schools right now. It matters to us, right? It should also matter to those who don't have children in the school, who perhaps had children in the school previously. Your Your children have the opportunity to go to Putnam Valley schools. We should be paying it forward, right? Again, it is related to the property values of our homes. If we start cutting programs, no one is going to want to move to Putnam Valley. So we need to make sure that we're understanding the implications of not coming out to vote, and you're right, for all.
Thank you.
I shared something earlier at the budget meeting, and that was, I was present in 1989 when the vote for the first high school came up. And through some legalities, the vote was overturned. We lost. After that, after it was announced that we could not have a high school, the population of Putnam Valley dropped by about 10%. In 1999, when the high school finally passed legitimately, and we're sitting in that very building, the population increased almost 4,000 individuals, from about 8,500 all the way up to where we are now, close to 12,000. And that's because a community is defined by the support we give to our educational system. So having this high school certified the fact that the residents of Putnam Valley cared about educating their kids and providing the best education that they possibly could. I mean, I lived through that. I lived through, a budget going down back when I was a kid, and losing teachers. I mean, just firing. And I remember one particular teacher I was very fond of crying when she got the pink notice. And this is back in the 60s. But that no vote has always been there. There's always been a contingent of people who feel voting no on this school budget is the one tax they can vote against. And no matter what you tell them, they will come out and vote no. So I agree with you, Crystal, Jeanette, everybody, that those individuals that really care about the worth of their property, the worth of their homes, need to really...
And the education of their
and the
children.
education of their children, even if they don't have children.
The
The
value
worth
of
of the
education
community.
overall.
Yeah, they need to keep that in mind, that no vote will be there, guaranteed. And if you wish the budget to pass, you have to counter that no vote. And that's all I'm going to say.
Me again, sorry. So we've had two budget meetings with the community. I know I attended the one today at high school, and we talked about, the question was raised, what positions are, what changes in the budget? And we mentioned staff position in the elementary school in order to impact class sizes, as well as a middle school guidance counselor.
Right. So two positions that were added to this year's budget, as I had mentioned briefly in the beginning, an additional elementary school teacher to lower class sizes. That's the current third grade going into fourth grade next year. We'll go from 5 sections to 6, so inherently making smaller class sizes. There's an addition, or really more of a transfer, budget transfer, for behaviorists. We've traditionally contracted out behavioral services. We have an exceptional individual within our district who's going to provide those services. It actually will probably be a net savings to the district compared to what we pay a current consultant. But that creates another vacancy for a special education teacher in that position we're looking to fill, as well as a middle school counselor. Our current middle school has 1 counselor responsible for nearly 500 students. That's far above the ratio as recommended. So the board had the foresight to support Mr. McCarty and myself and adding that position to the middle school. So an additional middle school counselor will help us address some of the student mental health issues and social emotional issues that we experience, especially at that age.
The meeting yesterday at the middle school, any questions raised then that is pertinent to bring up today?
Voter turnout tends to grab the most attention in these presentations. I believe both yesterday and today, that was a driving factor. We talked about class sizes, we spoke about transportation. Obviously, transportation is very much an unknown for us. So we're anxious to see how much that budget line will change. But for the most part, I think individuals are very happy in the services we're able to provide. And I guess my hope is that doesn't lead to complacency when it comes time to vote.
And I agree with your initial comment is parents, everyone, they have to be educated what's in the budget and come out to vote for that. Don't learn on social media. So,
And if people have questions, they should ask the source, which are Dr. Luft, reaching out to him, Jill, being able to reach out to her. If you have questions, reach out. I really want to thank the district team for being so transparent about the budget. There are some really big things coming that are challenging, and I think that our district is handling them quite well, considering. And the transparency of the budget, in my opinion, is what can help people to truly understand it and give them time to ask questions. Some of these, things that we deal with are not the normal way, finances are handled. And so I think that giving people time to ask questions is important. If you're not able to make the sessions, the information sessions that are being held, please reach out, because the more questions you ask, the more you know, and the better you can, the more information you can have when you do vote. And lastly, I just want to thank Dr. Luft and the entire team for having a commitment to building small classes. It matters. It matters to the kids in those rooms, and it also matters to the teachers who are teaching them. It is very challenging to teach 28 youngsters. And so having a class size of 22, 23 makes a huge, huge difference. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Okay. Ever onward.
Okay. New business. Item number 1.
Okay. Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education hereby appoints Dr. Grace Chan as the Assistant Superintendent for Business Administration in the School Business Administration 10-year area to serve a 3-year probationary appointment effective July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2027 at an annual salary of $230,000. Dr. Chen holds the following certifications: School Business Administrator, Permanent, and School District Leader, Professional certifications.
Second.
Questions or comments?
So Dr. Chan is here with her husband this evening. I do want to talk a little bit about the search process. So with Jill's retirement early this year and her taking on the role in an interim position, we knew early in the fall that we were going to have to begin this search process, one that we were not necessarily looking forward to. So we got out early and we found some very qualified candidates, but Dr. Chen really rose to the top immediately through the screening process, as well as the committee interview and presentation. Not only was she able to share her knowledge and experience, but did so in a very warm and comforting way that left everyone in the committee hoping that she would be our next business official. So I know this sort of marks the start of what will be the farewell tour for Jill. But she'll get plenty of her accolades as we go through this spring. But we are very lucky to have Dr. Chen willing to step in and take over Jill's 30-plus years of experience here in Putnam Valley. So I'm very much looking forward to welcoming her. I'm looking forward to learning from her. And I'm very thankful that she chose Putnam Valley over probably many other options to pursue her career. So thank you. I'm going to vote first.
vote.
I did such a good job, you guys forgot to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you. I feel honored to be chosen and appointed this evening, and I will serve you well. I want to thank my husband to come here with me, and a shout out to Mick Coleman. Jill,
Mickey.
I just want you to know that you will not be replaced. I will do my best to do all the excellent work that you've already started. A little something for you to enjoy in your retirement.
Oh, that's nice.
Welcome, board. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Welcome to the valley.
Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
I think for having sat through the budget presentation, she's got to take you out for at least dinner or something. Yeah? Drinks? You've earned it.
Okay.
Outstanding.
Number 2, please.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of school monitor Brandon Case from the district effective March 8th, 2024, as per document number 138-24, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Number 3, please.
Resolve to approve the notice of public budget hearing, budget vote, other propositions, and trustee election for the Putnam Valley Central School District as per document 146/24, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments? But this isn't going out until April, right?
This goes into the newspapers 4 times. The first one will be the first week in April. This is just the notice of what will be on the budget, not the specifics.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. I'd like to open it up for public comment on any topic. Okay, upcoming meetings, Dr. Love?
Oh, we have
Oh, wait,
public
I'm
comment.
sorry. That's okay.
My name is Miranda Zaki. I have a 9th grader and a 1st grader. I just wanted to ask you, Maureen, you went so fast. Did you say we're getting a girls' basketball coach?
Volunteers to the program.
I understand that, but they're going to be coaching basketball and wrestling for girls. Is that what I heard? Because you went so fast.
No, I'll tell you what it is exactly.
You want to do it? We have a volunteer for boys lacrosse program, a volunteer for girls modified lacrosse program, and another volunteer for the girls lacrosse program.
Yes, where you heard the
Yes.
basketball and wrestling was the postseason coaching stipends for their championship.
Oh, okay. I thought, I'm so sorry. You went so fast. I was trying to figure it out. Because the reason I heard that and my eyes opened up wide is because this is the first year that my daughter did wrestling. And I said, no, 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 for many weeks. She's not doing this, as she begged me to do this wrestling. And finally, I spoke to lots of people in our school district, and I let her do it. And I can't even tell you the most amazing experience of any sport my daughter has played was wrestling. Those coaches were incredible, and they have brought her to a place I never thought she would be today. So I got excited when I thought I heard that.
That's great to hear.
It's great to
the
hear.
truth.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I just, there was another question I had, but it's okay. I'll ask it later.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the cast presentations, Taylor, I think, was the girls, huh?
Taylor Rogers.
Yeah, was, I think, the first female wrestler that we had, and how difficult that can be to,
Yeah.
you know, to enter into a sport that's traditionally male, and, you know, and to struggle in the beginning and to overcome that struggle with the help of her coaches and her teammates. Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, we've had very successful in the short time that girls have participated in wrestling here in Putnam Valley. We've had some really successful. I know Joan Dimitriolis and Taylor Rogers. I know Maddie Keeler and many others that have taken advantage of that opportunity. Good.
I had the honor this over the 16 weeks to spend a lot of time with the three of the girls on our team, 3 out of the 4. And I have never seen in my life 3 girls that positively and empower each other like those 3 girls. And I really hope, you know, for all the parents like me, like, no, my daughter's not wrestling a boy. Sorry, you're not joining the wrestling team. That's just, they're made different. You know, unfortunately, because there's so few in our district, I really would like to see that empowerment, because I've never seen, I mean, I've been a nurse for many years in the ER, since I was 14 years old in the hospital and 17 in the ER, and I'm 50 now, and I have never seen girls empower each other in such a positive aspect like I saw the 3 girls out of the 4 that I spent so much time with. They truly, I have never honestly seen anything like this. And they truly are. So I really hope that parents, we could somehow find a way, maybe the 2 girls that are going to be left, because Taylor is graduating this year, and I hate to use student names, and it's very, sad to see her leave the other 2 behind. I really hope that other parents will look and try and encourage their daughters to do this so that we can have more girls. I mean, the 2 girls' wrestling tournaments that I went to, I was just flabbergasted. I got some education. I have to say, probably one of the most amazing part of any parent, any mom could have. The education that I got from those girls during this 16 weeks, the school can't even teach that. Nobody can. So I'm hoping more moms get their, and dads get their daughters involved.
And just, that's another example of what David Cantor went. So we've talked a couple of times during his interview what he brought up, what he wanted to bring to the district. And if I remember correctly, one of it was girls wrestling.
Yeah.
So followed through again on one of his promises. So.
I'm going to tell you, what changed my mind completely was the day that my daughter had Mr. Turner and oh my God, not Kantrowitz. Carano. Coach Carano. Coach Carano, Coach Turner, and Coach England. She had them call me. And those 3 people were the ones that convinced me. And I was like, no, I've seen lots of things in the ER, working in trauma in my life. She can't do this. And Coach Turner was the one that came up to me and he said, Miranda, you'll look at it as an unsafe sport. It's actually the most safest sport. So I let her do the one night of, practice thing. And I said, only if I can come for 10 minutes and watch, because I'm mom, and I've seen the accident. I went for those 10 minutes, and it was Coach Carano turned my whole mind. This isn't just wrestling. This isn't like girls against boys, and it was amazing. And it's those coaches, those 3 coaches, that truly make wrestling what it is.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, board member comments. Crystal, you had a...
I just wanted to let the board know that I attended the elementary steering committee, and they're doing some really great work, coming up with a welcome document for all new registrants, whether it be kindergarten or another grade, with lots of resources for parents. Things that we consider simple because we've been in the district for a while, but as a new parent, would be challenging to find that information. So the welcome packet is going to be like a live document. Parents will be able to get a paper copy of it, but it also has live links embedded. And it doesn't just contain information regarding school, it also contains information regarding like the town of Putnam Valley and things that are offered within the town, so that new families to the district can really get a really good experience and have all the information at their fingertips. I'm also on the middle school steering committee, and as a member of that, I will be attending the IB consultant interview tomorrow that will be happening at the middle school, so I'm excited to join that.
Great. Sam, do you have anything?
Just, I was wowed by Seussical and Anastasia. The Anastasia was a middle school production, and Seussical, Barbara, and Jeanette, and myself, and Crystal came in a little bit later.
Yep.
To see these young people perform at that age level, I was wowed. We have such talented kids and such talented instructors and club advisors who guide these children to their absolute best. I get very nostalgic and I get very choked up when I see these performers, these young kids doing what they do. It's just remarkable.
And the new music teacher that we just hired to replace Mrs. Calhoun came.
He
Because
was
he's
there.
he's so excited about coming to Putnam Valley. So it was nice to see him there. Thank you. Jeanette or Helen?
Just the bilingual is one of my favorite times of the year, so I'm glad I was able to participate in a couple of those sessions to watch the certification process. And of course, elementary school science fair, or the makers.
Yeah.
It's such a fun
It'll
event.
be great
so
to see
thank you
them
for letting
next-
us.
It's the next meeting, right? April 11th.
Yeah, the one I won't be at, though, unfortunately, so.
But you've seen them.
Yeah, most of them, but it's just always exciting, and kids are so fun, so.
Again, I sat for the Seal of Biliteracy presentations, and half of the CAS presentations, which is Creativity, Action, and Service. And I'm just always so impressed by the work that our students put in. The ownership that they take in directing their own learning is just really impressive. I attended the Eagle Award ceremony of Hasha by Eunice, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, I was freezing, but the room was cold. They had a ton of food, but as one of our graduates, she struggled through getting her Eagle, but her parents were so proud, and she got Putnam Valley officials were there, county officials, state, so it was really nice for her. The plays were, as people have said, just amazing talent, both in the on the tech side and in the acting side. The Assembly and Senate have submitted their one-house budgets. They have supported almost everything that we asked them to support, including asking the governor to increase funding for the pre-K, which would be really helpful, I think, to us. Might allow us to maybe crack that open a little, and restoring foundation aid and things like that. Yes, today we got I'm sure all of you get from NYSBA, Robert Schneider, an update today. He's the executive director. There's a little survey.
Yeah.
Really easy questions. If you could fill them out really fast. They just want to know, should we support it, should we not support it, or should we remain neutral? But interestingly, one of the questions was lowering the voting age for school district elections. Should NYSBA support it, not support it, or remain neutral? And again, I mean, I just think making the voting age 16 would increase the people coming out to vote on the budget that would support the budget. Or that would be looking at whether it was good for the community. I don't know. It was interesting. I was surprised to see it as one of the questions, but there are only about 10. I was glad to see Jocelyn Krause went up to Albany to advocate for music education, because I think, again, it's nice to have people from Putnam Valley. She's represents the county or music education. So, I mean, I just think it's good for Albany to hear from our teachers, from our boards, from our superintendent, whatever. So, I think that's it. Okay, I'd like a motion to adjourn to convene an executive session for 10 matters of the employment history of 11 particular persons and 1 matter that may lead to litigation.
So moved.
Second, thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Oh, do I need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there we go.